Hello, good evening, everyone. This is the first webinar that we're gonna produce as part of the GWs, title called um, COVID, how COVID is affecting the youth mental health. And this evening with us, we have Ryan Portelli, who's gonna deliver out the talk about this issue. Good evening, Ryan. How are you, first of all?
Not bad, not bad.
Good,
I'm
good.
managing quite well till now.
Yes. So tell us something about yourself. What do you do? What organization do you represent?
Sure. I'm Ryan, as the introduction by Lauren said. Practically, I'm here today on behalf of the Malta Association for the Counselling Profession, which is practically the association locally representing professional counselors working in our community, schools, and practically every aspect of our life. As for me, I am a counselor myself. My background is mostly in education. I've been working in education for the past 12 years now. Started off as a teacher, then I moved on to counseling. Now I'm a full-time counselor in education, but I also work with other various projects around other vulnerable groups in our communities outside schools. So that's, I think, a bit about me. More than enough, I guess. Practically, that's it.
Nice, Ryan. Quite an interesting role to say quite the least. So let's move on a bit to the topic at hand. So, how is the situation, COVID-19, affecting the youth's mental health?
Well, I think we need to start one step before that and state the obvious. But I try not to take anything for granted. COVID-19 is affecting mental health in general. So whether we're coping well or not, somehow effects of COVID-19 on our general mental health are being affected. So from the most person that feels that is coping very well with the situation, to the person that might be feeling very overwhelmed about COVID-19, we're all being affected and our lifestyles are all being affected. I start with this because if we had to look, psychologically speaking, at the ability of the person to adjust to realities, any change that we go through, whether we want it or not, causes a significant amount of stress. So we might just look at, for example, a career change, a job change, just sometimes, changing house, which would be sometimes, most of the time, entirely your choice to do so. These changes all bring about stress, even when we have control over them. Now, let alone something that is like COVID-19 that happened, that came onto us in a couple of days, I would say. We're reading about what's happening in Italy, and in a couple of days, we're realizing that COVID had reached Malta. Maybe not with that intensity because of all the measures that were taken, but this COVID came to Malta. So that brought about change, and that change obviously affected all of us. Now, today we'll be focusing mostly on young people, on youths. And the question in fact was how is COVID-19 affecting the youth mental health? Again, it's a bit more overarching all developmental stages. But if I have to focus mainly on the youth, I think the main advantage / disadvantage that youth have in this situation is the fact that people that are in the teenage and youth area are people that have access all the time to media. Now, one might say, what is the link here? Having this inundation of news, of what we call pandemic news, so reading all the time, seeing feeds and posts on social media coming up all the time about the pandemic, and therefore about things that are somehow affecting the general well-being or creating instability, or we rarely read about positive stories when it regards to pandemic. So when we have all this going on, and youths are the people that are mostly in touch and mostly connected all the time to these social media, obviously the effect is there. So even if we look at that point, this inundation of news coming on and on and on can also already create a number of overwhelming effects on youths in general. Now, if we have to go into a bit more detail about what are the proper effects now of COVID on our lives, I think the most obvious one would be that of exclusion and isolation. Now, whether we were used to it before or not, whether teenagers are used to it or not, the reality of COVID is that it's kind of forced us to move on to virtual meetups. Case in point, what we're doing today. Probably, if COVID was not here, this could have been a talk in a hall somewhere, okay, or some discussion somewhere. But given the situation, we have to go online, which has its advantages, but also it's highlighting a bit more this idea of isolation, this idea that, okay, I can connect with people, but in reality, I can't do my daily routines. I can't do what I usually used to do with my friends. I can't go out and whatever, watch a film and play a five-a-side football match and just go shopping, whatever that is. These were behaviors, these were things that we used to engage in order to feel part of something. Point blank, from one day to another, we lost all this. So there's an amount of grief, there's an amount of loss of our what was our daily routine. On top of this, we might have experienced also another loss, which is what I like to call the traditional milestones, as in the usual way I celebrate my birthday or my friend's birthday, or the usual way I celebrate Easter. Till now, it's like Easter and maybe birthdays that happened in this period. That was also affected, and there's not a loss. And you might say, oh, yeah, it's once, so you can deal with once. That's okay. But in reality, these small losses on top of each other are definitely having their toll on us, on our well-being. Something we take also for granted, I think, is our adaptation to the new systems, even being online all the time, speaking to friends over a screen. It's been researched. Screen time, screen meetings, so these online meetings drain you much more than real meetings. Something that we might say, but we youths are used to using the tech gadgets and devices to communicate. Yes, but you had an option. Now you don't. In most cases, that option was taken away, and you just need to adapt to this new reality. Now, when it comes to mental health, I think an important part is also the fear of the unknown and the instability. There were a lot of memes going on and jokes going on about the superintendent, Professor Charmaine, coming every day on TV at a certain particular time and people waiting to see what she's going to say. In reality, that was coming from a position of, this instability, this fear of not knowing. We want to know, someone gives us a direction, because that instability created insecurity in many people. And that's why we were looking at Professor Gauci to actually, there's just one example, but we wanted direction somehow. Now, whether we just watch our own Facebook Live or we just stick to the TV or something, but the whole lifestyle was being changed slightly in order to get something from there as well. And I think the most obvious of them all, of how mental health is being affected, is that of the financial part. I know we have a whole debate going on the island right now, whether we're going to be finance-oriented, economy-oriented, or health-oriented. It's a whole debate. Those of you who are interested, I think the Malta Federation for the Professional Associations have issued a very good press release about it, where it spoke about this balance, because one depends on the other. You can't have a healthy economy without a healthy workforce, and you can't have a healthy workforce without a healthy economy. So it's very much interdependent. But when it comes to the loss of financial income, this could be the loss of part-time jobs if the person is like studying. So youths might have lost part-time jobs or even full-time jobs if they're doing a full-time job and not studying right now. But there's also something called the third-party loss. That means youths that would have their quality of life being affected because the main breadwinners in the family, the parents, have lost their jobs or are reduced jobs or their pay got reduced or whatever. And therefore, the general quality of life is also being affected because of this loss of the parents. So I think, to sum it all up, this might feel a lot, and it is a lot. And I think at this point, one important point I like to always repeat, and this is something I repeat also in therapy and when we're working with people in counseling, admitting vulnerability is not a weakness. So identifying all of these and saying, listen, this is getting too much for me. This is something harsh. This is something difficult. It's not being weak, but it's being aware, which is a very different point. And being aware is your first step towards getting better. I don't know if that answers the question, Larno.
Yes, in fact, quite interesting points actually to raise about this, and it will obviously move on to the next question now. And so, from your perspective as well, what are the effects of isolation and anxiety amongst the youths?
Okay. Well, they're two different things. I've mentioned isolation a bit already. So the social isolation, this feeling alone, this being not just feeling alone, but being physically alone. The anxiety is something that it's not new. It's not new to, unfortunately, to our lives. It's not new to the lives of youths. We are seeing an increased number of youths that are struggling when it comes to anxiety. And I'm sure the insecurity and the instability I mentioned before is highlighting something like this. What I'd like to speak about when it comes to isolation and anxiety is some actual behaviors that are a result of isolation and anxiety, so that we're at a point where we can recognize, because sometimes anxiety is a very good, I would say, carnival character, because anxiety can dress up in many ways and hide and change forms almost. Okay, so thinking about what behaviors we might be engaging in as a result of anxiety is something very important for us to identify when we need to see what's happening really and truly. I think the most obvious is the lethargy. That is when you feel, not for one day, because it happens that for one day you feel that you want to live on your sofa, and that would be amazing. So it's Netflix all day, snacks, not even cooking something, just snacks all day for one day. Well, one day, let's say it happens to everyone, we have an off day. But if this is happening recurrently, where you're always feeling like just I want to move from the sofa to the bed, to the sofa, to the bed, to the sofa, to the bed, and that's it. Well, that's a first sign that something is not on. And I think it's one of the first things that we need to stay really attentive for. Something else that might happen is what we call the depressive symptoms. Now, I'm being very cautious about the word because we tend to overuse and abuse the word depression. Okay, so depression is one thing. Depressive symptoms are a bit different. Diagnostically speaking, I'm not going into that, but I know we use depression everywhere. So I work with teenagers, 16 to 20 years of age. And when something is going wrong or when we're not super busy, the first answer would be depression now. It doesn't mean that there's the actual mental health issue, but it's a way of saying, as we all know. Depressive symptoms could be these feelings of low mood. Again, not feeling low mood for a day, couple of hours. We all pass through that. But when this is prolonged over a series of days, and when, for example, things that used to give you pleasure are not giving you pleasure anymore. So let's say you used to enjoy playing FIFA on your PlayStation, and at some point you just realize that you put FIFA on and I don't really feel like playing, and then switches back off. Well, that's something that is not what is normally your behavior. There's a change over there. And I think that could be a change, this loss of pleasure and interest in things that were usually really interesting. And that's something we need to also take care of. Something else is lazying the brain. So if I have to be more technical, it's the cognitive decline. It's when we like switch off our brain. We don't challenge our brain anymore. We don't think. We don't stop and try to solve something. We just let things pile up and leave them on the side. It's just like when you're, there's no use of doing anything. That's another sign that we need to take care of. Obviously, one of the signs that something is not on always is sleep quality. So if you as a person, or you're noticing someone in your family, it could be that the quality of sleep is very poor. So the person is either oversleeping or not sleeping. There is something that could be also an alarm bell to start noticing what the effects of isolation, anxiety, and I always attach these depressive symptoms might cause. Obviously, this might lead to weaker immune systems. We all know mind-body connected. I'll be speaking a bit later on as well on this, but mind-body are very much connected. And if the mind is not okay, the body will not be okay. And therefore, we see that it weakens the immune system and we get sick more often. Obviously, if we stay idle for a long time, if we're not busy, if we do not keep active, something that happens is overthinking. And overthinking is the first step towards most of the anxiety issues. Because something that might be simple, if you overthink it, it becomes complex and it becomes unbearable and sometimes too heavy to carry. Also, I think two things that maybe we don't regard them as so common, but anxiety and mostly isolation can also increase the risk for both substance abuse and alcohol abuse, or misuse, as in when people would engage in behaviors where substance and alcohol are taken and misused to an extreme, and also become at risk to abusive behaviors. Now, when I say abusive behaviors, it could be either they are the persons that are abusing of people living with them, and abuse can be of various kinds. We all know that abuse can be physical, but abuse can also be emotional, psychological. So it goes on many types of levels of abuse. But also they might end up being the person on the receiving end of the abuse because of having people, for example, we read in the news, the amount of domestic violence incidents increased with the lockdown in many countries. Okay, so this is also a risk of having this isolation. And that is why it's important that though isolation is kind of forced on us, we still keep as much as we can contact with other people.
Yes, Ryan, these are quite troublesome effects over here. I mean, one has to watch out for these things as well. So in relation to the mentioned effects due to isolation and anxiety, so in your opinion, what measures can be taken to avoid or improve this situation?
Okay. I would sum it up in two words. But then obviously I'll try to break them a bit down and explain further. But the two words would be keep active. So in order to improve mental health in general, it's keeping active. And I think we need to think about keeping active from 4 points of views. So it's keeping active emotionally, psychologically, physically, and cognitively. Normally, when we hear the words keep active, it's always associated with the physical activity. So, keep active, go for walks, which is very important. So if we're speaking about this idea of isolation, anxiety, and even depressive issues, we all know that biologically speaking, so this might sound a bit technical, but I think it's very important to understand. Biologically speaking, exercise helps the release of serotonin, which is a biochemical in the brain, that it's called the happy hormone. So it's that part of us that makes us feel a bit better. And exercise helps with that. So walking in fresh air, in open spaces, even doing right now indoor workouts. So all that releases the serotonin that makes us feel better. Therefore, it's not just a myth that you go for a walk and you feel better. It's actually happening also biologically. So in our body, this happens as well. Therefore, the keeping physically active is very important because we have already, as I said in the beginning, experienced the amount of stress, anxiety, and because of the changes happening without us having control over them. At least by keeping active, we're balancing out by really the release of the serotonin in our system, and also, let's face it, being in open spaces in a safe way is something that always energizes us a bit more, rather than staying indoors for days on end. I mentioned the 4 components. So that was the first one, the physical component, which is maybe the most obvious. Then there's also the emotional, keeping active emotionally. What does this mean? Keep in touch. Yes, we can't go out, true, granted, but we can still keep in touch. Maybe for those of us working from home or staying more at home, we have even a bit more time. Because let's face it, if we reduce the traveling time from our day, we manage to gather some time for us more. Use it, call someone, just have a video call. Sometimes a video call that is not related to work or to some kind of meeting, but it's a video call to just have a laugh. Okay, so just keep in touch with people, be present in their lives and allow them to be present in yours, even though we're distant. But we need to have a conscious awareness. This is something that I do with some of my friends, and the first time we did it, we almost laughed about it because it felt funny. We're actually having online meetings scheduled in our diaries just to connect and do nothing and chat and just, I don't know, sometimes watch Netflix, and there's a Netflix play option and we're watching the same thing and commenting on what's happening. Just keeping that social component, because that's very important. So that's the keeping active emotionally. Then there's also the keeping active psychologically. That is, keep the interests going. Make sure that you don't stop getting interested in stuff. Psych yourself up, I always say. Each day, keep busy. I always say each day it has to be like you're going out for work like it's a normal day. So a whole day in your onesie, and now it's not onesies anymore because it's too hot for them, but a whole day in your pajamas or in your t-shirt and shorts or whatever you wear at home is not healthy. You're not psychologically, you're not starting the day. You're just putting yourself in a situation, in a mood where psychologically you're already geared up to having a lethargic, slow day, a very monotone, non-exciting day. So yes, get up, have a shower, dress normal clothes if you're going to work, do your hair, take care of your whatever, facial, whatever products you normally use, keep on using. It's all important because we need to keep this going on. It goes also with having a positive outlook. So even though it might look dull, and sometimes it will look dull, and if people were affected, even for example, from a work perspective or financially, it might be a bit harder to do all this. And people might say, oh, well, it's easy for you speaking about these things. True, it's true. It's not as easy. But it's always, as I said in the beginning, being aware of what's happening and trying to do a small step. You don't need to aim at being super happy if you're not, but be aware that you're not and say, okay, listen, I'm not happy today because of all these worries I have, but let me try and focus on one good thing that I can do for today. It's small steps, very small steps, and those are big successes. And the last one is the cognitive, keep active cognitively. I always like to say this is something that we should carry post and pre-COVID-19, I would say, but challenge your limits cognitively. Don't say this is what I know and I stick to that. Read new things, find new things, challenge yourself, try new things. We always say that we don't have time in general to read or to whatever we have. This might be a good time to start exploring. I hate the statement. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading the statement that if you say that you didn't have time during COVID situation, then the problem is kind of you. It was something like this, because now time is there available. No, it could be true that you either don't have time or don't have the energy or the resources to do certain things. And that's fine. But I think if you just look into something small that is new every day, it could be just reading a small article online, and you just challenge a bit your boundaries a bit more, and you're keeping your brain active. You're challenging the limits that you have posed on your brain. I think that's also a way of keeping active. So to summarize it, again, what measures can help improve mental health? Well, it's keeping active, and keeping active from all these spheres of life.
Thank you, Ryan. So we've just talked about how to improve the mental health situation currently. So where can the youths find assistance with their mental health? Where can they call? Where they can contact someone to assist them?
Okay. So I think we need to again divide this a bit into two. The first one is a bit more the internal side of it, as in order to seek assistance, you have to first create awareness. So make sure that you're in touch with your body physically and with your mind psychologically, and see what you're going through. Recognize the signs, recognize whether you're okay or a bit less okay, whether you need some kind of support or whether you need to be more available and to be more around your friends. I think that's the first question we need to answer. So we need to get more in touch of where we are at. Therefore, we need to seek support. We need to remain visible. And this is important. So in a world where social media is all speaking all about visibility and posting every day and having Insta stories and TikToking now as well. So in a world where we have all this and it's all about remaining visible, make sure that it's not only the image of you that is visible, but you are visible to the people that matter around you. The real you. You with the weaknesses that maybe on TikTok doesn't come out, and that's fine. And maybe on Instagram everything looks perfect, and that's fine, okay. But you need to have that one or two outlets where you are visible for who you are, where you are visible with your vulnerabilities, with what is okay and what is not okay. And I think that is very, very important, that we have the ability to recognize when we are not okay and to reach out. Now, sometimes it could be just a chat with a friend, just a chat with a family member, a partner, whatever. And that could be enough. In certain cases, as you mentioned, Lar, maybe more professional assistance would be needed. And in that case, we have options. So if I had to look just at three things that come to mind immediately, four support lines that were issued just for this situation of COVID. As in, one of them was existing before, it was the 179, but that's something else. But then we have the 1772, the 1770, and the 2598-1000. Those of you still in school, the 2598-1000 is a support line. It's called Nisamak. It's a support line for people in school for whatever they need. Professionals will be there every day to answer whatever the needs are. And if needs be referred to counselors working in schools or other support professionals working in schools. The other two lines, the 1772 is a line that is managed by the Approach FSWS. So it's Approach and other agencies. And again, over there, it can be just a support line for loneliness. So you call and you speak to someone. Having said that, if needs be, the association I'm representing today, so the Malta Association for the Counseling Profession, has started a project with that support line, that if a person needs further to just speak a bit, then just maybe open up a bit about what he's passing through, but he feels that counseling might be needed, there's a free counseling service that is being done online as well, for people that request it and need it. So they have an initial form to fill, which will be filled by the person answering the phone. And if the person needs counseling, he will be referred to the service that we are offering and attached to a professional counselor that is warranted and registered. So everyone was vets to have the people that are qualified doing the job. Apart from that, there's also kellimni.com. So people who maybe prefer the chat side of it, there's also kellimni.com. There's something else for people. It's for everyone, but it specializes for people that fall under the LGBTIQ community, which is Rainbow Support Services offered by MGRM. So again, if you go on Facebook, it's Rainbow Support Service. There's again a social work and counseling service that is offered over there as well. Obviously, there are counselors working in the community. And I think if you would want to go a bit further, maybe and seek help, maybe privately, which is also an option, on the website of macpmalta.org, in the download section, you can find a list of qualified counselors you can contact. Most of them would be working as well online, so you can call them and check with them. So as you can see, support is there. Support is there. I mentioned like 6 or 7 venues of support. But in order for us to reach the level of support, we need to go to the first step, which is being aware of where we are, how we are, and what we're feeling. And I think once we get that, then we can move into support and we can move into recognizing what our needs are and therefore working along those needs and identifying those needs that we have.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you for your time here. This was actually very interesting to us as well, to us youths, and also to other people who are suffering here with these issues. So thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Hope to see you next time on our second webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.